everybody, welcome to A Fern Between Us, episode 7, and with our guest, Michael Wagener from ACEQ. Thank you so much for joining us, Michael.
Thank you, Michelle, for having me in these times. It's fun to have a little interaction, even if it is via technology.
Right? For anyone joining us for the first time, I'm Michelle. And
I'm Jesse.
We are two of the 4 owners of Vivac Winery, and we are going to ask Michael some fun questions about stay-at-home cooking tips and pick his brain for how we can get through these times when we're a little bit bored and we don't know what we're doing in the kitchen.
Well, if I don't know, I'll lie.
I like it.
That's perfect.
So I see that you are wearing your mandated mask while you're at the restaurant. That's fabulous.
Yeah, the governor, and I do feel that she's doing a great job of keeping us all safe, but just released today that at all times, I should say ACEQ is open for curbside takeout, and we actually started doing delivery because of the situation, and we will actually continue that even after or when the restrictions are released back to normal, table service. But starting today, and we've been doing it since we reopened, but every employee has to be in a mask at all times. And we're just, really trying to keep everyone safe. We're not in the business of, depleting our customer base.
Right?
That's a good call.
Yeah, and so you guys actually have been doing a lot of fun and exciting things. You're remodeling right now, correct? Or you have been?
Yeah, we when I took over the restaurant now 5 years ago, it was a tiny little space that you remember, and we've gone through a lot of changes over those years, and this is kind of the last phase. And my new partner, young chef Elijah, who's cooking right now, but maybe he'll pop his head in, who will eventually be buying the restaurant from me because I'm getting a little old. I'll still be involved, but he's a super young, talented young man, and we had the opportunity with the closure to kind of get a little jump start on what has kind of been the ultimate vision since I started remodeling years ago, and that was just to continue opening up the kitchen. And now it's really, I don't know of any kitchen, at least in New Mexico, that's probably as open when you're in the inner room as ACEQ is now. And it also just makes for a little better flow, which, makes everyone's experience more enjoyable.
That's
Yeah, we did some remodeling.
That's so fantastic.
And cooking.
Yes. And
we can't get to the wine pairing just yet. We don't have a full license,
right?
Or package license, I should say. But we are definitely excited to get back at that in due time.
Absolutely, and as always, a thank you to all of your support all these years. You were one of our first accounts that took our wine in the kegs and have always been a huge proponent, even before ACEQ, when you were the wine buyer at other restaurants. And so, thank you so much for all these years of, getting behind New Mexico wine.
Well, you guys make it easy, so thank you.
Well, thank you. Okay, well, let's jump into some of these fun questions. We have, our first question is, cooking every meal every day gets boring. Not all of us are chefs, of course. And Sarah would like any advice on how to make the same old, a little bit exciting while we're in lockdown still.
Yeah, well, I'd like to just preface it and say that I am not a chef per se, but I definitely have had to jump in and do some cooking. But in my now over half my life in this business, been around many talented chefs and have definitely learned a lot from them. And I agree with you that especially for us normal folk, cooking can sometimes get a little mundane. And so, yeah, I think a few of the things and just things that I have done myself to progress, and now with all this time that we have on our hands, you can really kind of experiment, which is one thing. You know, don't be afraid to try new things. Don't be afraid to fail too. But like, it's fun to kind of clean out the freezer at times, see what you have, and you know, maybe experiment, with putting different things together. And I was kind of thinking about that today, and we just had Cinco de Mayo, and you know, a taco is a great vessel just for experimenting, because you really can do whatever you want. And you know, we're coming into summer, so even if it's not something you clean out of your freezer, it may just be portions of things, and using some of those beautiful, fresh, local vegetables and or proteins that we have access here and also elsewhere. But, you know, starting with, let's just say the taco, you know, learn to make your own tortillas. Ooh. It's really not that difficult. And the biggest thing is it just takes a little bit of time, which we all kind of have more of than we're used to. So, you know, that's one thing that I think can really, and it may seem like just a small change to something that seems so kind of everyday and regular, but you'll really notice a huge difference just starting with the homemade tortillas.
That's a great tip. As we move on to our second question, which, you know, you touched on, tacos are probably some of the world's most favorite dish to turn to. So this might actually be in keeping with this second question. What is the best go-to Mother's Day meal? That's from Noelle. And since we have Mother's Day coming up this weekend, what would you recommend that maybe is easy to get, easy to put together? I don't know.
Well, you know, I'm going to go to family tradition on this one. Mother's Day in my family always was about brunch. Mm-hmm. And brunch, I would have to say, is personally one of my favorite meals to have for a multitude of reasons. One, it's usually, I guess, typically on a nice, you know, spring, summer day. And Mother's Day, hopefully, will be just that. And it's also kind of that anything goes mealtime. So I would say brunch and just a couple little things, and also, you know, playing and keeping things exciting. You know, maybe if you're gonna do waffles, have like maybe instead of syrup, something like a little honey, get some mild green chili. Ooh. And dice up some nice bacon. Ooh. Make a little honey green chili topping for your waffle, a little more savory style. And another one of my favorite things is eggs Benedict and lox and bagel. And I like to do a little kind of combo. So for the Benedict, still poached egg, a traditionalist there. But instead of, or for your meat, just use a little cured salmon, which you can pretty much get at almost any grocery store nowadays. And then I like to make a really easy little lemon dill creme fraiche. If you don't have access to creme fraiche, you can use sour cream. You just juice some fresh lemon, add some fresh dill, stir it up, super easy. Oh, man. And then I like to add, for my greens, just a little bit of sauteed spinach and red onion, and then top with just some capers. And it's kind of a mix of eggs Benedict and lox and bagel, which are two of my personal favorites. Mm-hmm. Might be a little weird for some people, but, you know, give it a shot.
Wow, those sound absolutely amazing. And are you going to be open special hours on Mother's Day? Can people do pickup for that?
You know, we will be open Mother's Day evening, so we've adjusted our hours a little bit, so 4 to 8. We won't be doing brunch. Again, I feel that brunch, doesn't really travel well. a lot of the time, and is more about people being together. So we'll let everyone do that at their house, but we will be open that evening for dinner service. And we're kind of sad that we can't serve brunch on a hopefully beautiful day if the winds die down.
Right. That sounds amazing. What are you planning on doing for Mother's Day there, babe?
Well, if I wanted to make my wife happy, I'd probably eat tacos.
We are going to move on. I swear, at some point, I'm just not going to have him on the show because you just really can't take him anywhere, and we're just in the house. So I'd say I can't take him out of the house, but I can't have anybody see him in the house either.
You're joined at the Fern.
Joined at the Fern, exactly.
All right, let's move on, and I'm not going to ask Jesse any more questions for the rest of the show. When cooking with wine, Gabrielle's asking, do you need to add the wine that is in the recipe, for example, sherry, which sometimes people don't have on hand, or can you use the wine that's in your glass that you're currently drinking? And a two-parter here is, or can you use a wine that you did not like or has been open for a long time in that recipe? So I'm going to let Michael take this, and then I'm super opinionated, so I have a version too.
Yes. Please, as I'm with the wine experts. Well, I would say to the first part of that question, no, you don't have to use exactly what the recipe calls for. Just kind of stay in the same style of what the recipe calls for. You can even substitute like something like sherry, like you mentioned that, who really has sherry lying around usually. But maybe in your, little liquor stash, you've got a little dry vermouth. I mean, you can actually substitute dry vermouth. It usually works quite well. It's another, fortified, it's not a wine, but, in that kind of same family.
Yeah.
If you don't have port lying around, use a nice, rich red wine if you have it. Or just use a red wine. It will braise or make a real nice sauce, just fine. And personally, I think, and I'll let you weigh in on this, but as lovers of wine here, we want to save the good stuff for ourselves. Use the off wine or that bottle that, if it happens, you just weren't able to finish with your friends, and that will again cook, in my opinion, just fine. And sometimes it even works a little better because it gives it a more pronounced flavor than a freshly opened bottle of, especially like red wine.
I was going to touch on that too.
Off the 5-year-old bottle that you forgot you hid behind the couch, but
right.
I agree. I think there's that fine line of, if you're opening a really, truly very special bottle of wine that you've been saving for a long time, a lot of these recipes call for a full cup of wine, and you don't want to pour your expensive wine that you've been saving and coveting into a dish, but you also don't want to use a wine that has been open for 2 weeks. It's pretty much vinegar now, and it's going to absolutely alter the flavor, like Michael was saying, of the dish itself. I think it's always nice to have some of your cheaper wines accessible in your wine rack so that you can grab a red that is more full-bodied, but you didn't break the bank for it, and you can add some to it.
Laden wine.
Yeah. And I totally agree. You're looking at those aspects of, if it's calling for port, then you want something big and jammy that has all that sugar and fruit. And ironically, then if you do have a bottle of wine that has been open for a little bit longer, you want to be looking at that has higher acidity because it's starting to turn into vinegar. And so that can be useful in a recipe. Jess?
Yeah.
Any
I
other?
would agree.
I agree completely.
That was so much better. All right, we've got the fourth and final question from Michael. What is the best marinade for wild game? And that comes from David. So we've got lots of hunters that are diving into their freezers full of meat and need a few tips on how to make that even better.
Well, I'm going to preface that because best is like, deciding your favorite bottle of wine, or I don't have children, but which is your favorite child. We love them all for different reasons, right?
Yeah.
So I think it first depends on what game you're marinating, and also who you're marinating it for. If it's your group of hunting buddies that maybe enjoy this meat often and enjoy that slightly gamey note to that meat, let's say it's venison, which is a little gamier than like elk, you may not want to use too heavy of a marinade. So maybe just, especially with something like venison and or elk, imparting a little bit of olive oil in whatever marinade is always good because it's a leaner meat. But then maybe for those that enjoy that gaminess, kind of sticking pretty traditional, a little Worcestershire, salt, pepper, a little garlic, maybe some onion. But for those times that you maybe want to kind of mask that gaminess a bit more, kind of play around and get a little experimental. Again, some great things are Asian influenced things. So something like maybe a little soy, honey, ginger marinade, which is going to definitely be a little stronger, slightly sweet, but will kind of counteract that kind of tang that the natural venison especially has. Elk, which we're blessed with beautiful elk here. I like to keep it a little more traditional as well. Use some of that slightly older red wine. Again, Worcestershire is always great. And then just kind of garlic, black pepper, olive oil, salt. I think the biggest thing is to give it the time overnight at least. Even a day and a half if the next morning, the previous morning, you can start it just to really let it get, especially if you're using like a red wine, let it get some of those beautiful lighter berry notes that'll come through.
Absolutely. We love using wine with everything, but
those are great tips. I love
absolutely.
that, Michael.
And you've used milk to soak meat in before too.
Sometimes, yeah, and that can kind of bring out the game, or bring down the gaminess a little bit, and then the main thing with a gamier meat, you want to either cook it really, really long or really, really fast, and as rare as you can possibly stand it. Is basically the way I think of it.
Yeah, exactly. And the milk is great, especially for like more kind of organ meat, kidneys, liver, and it does draw out that kind of irony, gamey note. You could also just soak your meat before you marinate it in some salt water to draw out some of that gaminess too. But like you said, Jesse, then it will dry it out a little bit more. So you either want to have it really high, quick heat, and just kind of sear it to keep those juices in, or low and slow.
I love it, man.
Those are great tips because Jesse is an avid hunter, and so is my dad, and we end up with a lot of game meat, and it's taken a decent amount of learning how to cook it properly for everybody in the family to kind of get it behind that. But that's awesome.
And meat kind of, even in the same game, will vary by where it's from. I know back home in Wisconsin, we have a lot of venison, and your deer that come from eating a lot of corn by like farming areas versus bucks that live, or deer that live in the woods most of their life. You kind of kind of think about where your whatever game it is coming from too, and you know, just like with wine, think about that terroir and kind of what flavors match.
That is such good advice. I have not even thought of that, and I really like that.
Yeah, the mule deer out here, I mean, they're eating sagebrush all day, and so they're a little, you know, they're gamier for sure than the whitetails.
Like a young coffee rub.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. We know that you have a busy evening and need to get back at it. Thank you so much. We're excited about all of these fun advice. I know better than to say certain words anymore. So thank you so much. Everybody who's watching, please go to ACEQ's social media pages, like them, follow them, and order some pickup. Michael, thank you, and we will be in touch.
Thank you guys for thinking of me. It's always a pleasure, and hope to see you soon.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate it.
Bye.
You well. Stay healthy.
All right, you too, brother.
All right, that was awesome. And now we have a chance to jump into the tasting, the emotional sanitizer part of our show, which is already way underway because, you know, that's the way it goes. Jesse's already filled his glass up a couple of times, so jump on board for the Tempranillo tasting. This is one that a lot of people really love. Do I need to like ask you to leave?
No, I was like, you guys are setting me up with all that taco and meat talk. That was awesome.
This is why I drink.
So we're drinking Tempranillo today in two different ways. We'll tell you why in a second, but we'll start with the Tempranillo proper.
We didn't need that cork. I'm going to drink it anyway.
Tempranillo is a grape that comes from Spain. If you've ever had a Rioja or Ribera de Duero, that's what their main grape is, Tempranillo. They grow a lot of it in Spain, all over Spain. They grow. They pretty much use Tempranillos in most of the regions in Spain, and it's a great grape, and it really does well here in New Mexico. So this is one of our more popular varieties. I think it comes in around $19-20 a bottle.
It's 19.
19 at the tasting room, 20 in the store, something like that. Exactly that, maybe. So one of our more affordable ones as well, but most of the wineries in the state grow a Tempranillo, and
they might not grow it, but they make it.
Yeah, make a Tempranillo, and I recommend a lot of them. So, you know, check us all out.
One of the things that I think is important to talk about with Tempranillo is how food friendly it is. It does have a lot of earthy aspects. It is really amazing with game meat. So we were just talking to Michael about all of those wonderful tips on how to make it, really accessible for people that are not interested in something quite so gamey. You can still eat amazing dishes that are deer or antelope or elk that are tamed down, and this is a really nice pairing. The other thing is that it goes amazingly well with dark chocolate. So I always like to...
Hi, baby.
Hi. I always like to pair it with my sister-in-law's handmade chocolates. So Liliana makes these amazing painted mold. They're just gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. But they taste incredible. They taste even better than they look, which you can't even imagine. We've posted some pictures on Instagram and some of our other platforms, so you can see images of them. You're just astounded. Anyway, this goes so well with those.
Yeah.
That I always like to recommend this as kind of an all-around date wine because it goes with the steak or also the dessert.
Oh, sorry,
portion.
guys, my mind's in the gutter here.
I don't know. Quarantine's getting to him, clearly. Anyway, so it's an all-around great wine. It's also one that impresses but doesn't break the bank. So then let's jump into the port, which we call Amante. And why do we call it Amante and not port?
Because you cannot call a port if it's a port style wine a port if it's not made in Oporto, Portugal. It's just like a bubbly is not called champagne. It's called a sparkling wine if it's made anywhere else in the world besides Champagne. Champagne owns the name Champagne. It makes sense. Oporto owns the name Port. Yeah, it makes sense as well. So I think it was maybe 12 years ago or so that they got the right to be the exclusive one to be able to call it port. So now we call it a port style wine.
And we had to come up with a name.
And so we had to come up with a name. We called it Amante, which means lover.
We felt like we were in a soap opera. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know how we ended up landing on that.
Now we don't want to change the name, but whatever.
It's a little...
It is a sexy wine though. And it is made from the traditional... In Oporto, France, one of the main grapes that they use for making...
Portugal?
Yeah, sorry. Portugal. One of the main grapes they use is called
Cut off.
Tinta Roriz. But Tinta Roriz is actually the same grape as Tempranillo. So we make it out of a Tempranillo. Our base wine for this is a Tempranillo. And then halfway through fermentation, we stop the fermentation, so it still has 8% residual sugar somewhere in there.
So it is sweet.
So then we fortify it with brandy and cool the temperature way, way, way down, and we stop the fermentation that way. So the brandy we use is made from New Mexico grape wines. Made this brandy. Then the brandy is used to stop. So all the grapes for this come from New Mexico as well, and
which is our signature. 100% of the time, we're using New Mexico grapes,
Exactly.
even when vineyards get hit hard and there's plenty of reason to shop outside of the state. We're still shopping for New Mexico grapes. The other thing about a port style wine that is really interesting is that it's more food friendly than you think. A lot of people think it has to come, right? It has to come at the end of the meal and be by itself or with a cigar, which is also awesome. But it can start a meal with some cheeses that are more solid.
Firm cheese. What were you gonna call it?
I was gonna call it hard cheese.
Hard cheese.
And I thought I shouldn't go there. Like
hard cheeses is great.
And nuts, warm.
Warm nuts. Come on, babe. You're just teeing it up over here. This is horrible. What else you got for me?
Now it's on my mind. Now I can't stop. And this is live. And I can't.
Hard cheese, warm nuts, tasty tacos. Things that make the ladies happy.
Oh my God. No. Wow. This is a doozy. So sorry, guys. I hate to even ask, but...
This will go great with a cheesecake. This will go great with... This goes great with all kinds of stuff. We sell it in these sexy little splits, half bottles, because you don't want to drink a full glass of port like you do a full glass of wine.
And I should have actually gotten some of our little port glasses. We sell them in the tasting room, and they're really lovely, and they help aerate. But I didn't.
I like it this way better anyway, myself.
Well, good. All right.
But ports are one of those that can age for 1,000,000 years.
And it does better being open and sitting on your counter for a little bit, so you can have a little bit each night, and it doesn't do a huge detriment to the taste and flavor profile.
Exactly.
And it is really good to cook with. Michael did mention, saying port can make amazing reductions. And so we actually have recipes on our website for each of the wines, and that includes both of these wines. And so I try to come up with something different and unusual that you can try at home. What?
You know me.
Anyway, I am going to, we're going to wrap up.
No, do we have to?
Well, I have some wine advice as we close out.
What you got?
So one of the things that we touched on was how great the Tempranillo is with dark chocolate. Someone actually messaged us, a friend of ours, Gabriel, and he asked this week what to pair with milk chocolate peanut butter cups. And he had a really amazing brand that he was trying to, not your everyday.
Right, not just Reese's, but
Yeah,
like something.
they looked really good. But what I tend to recommend that most people have never thought of is our Chardonnay. Chardonnay goes really, really well with peanut butter. So it's such a fun pairing, and it just dazzles, and it can handle milk chocolate. Whereas some of other wines, red wines, have a harder time with milk chocolate. They tend to do better with dark chocolate. So that's kind of a fun little idea if you want to try that. That might be fun for Mother's Day as well, is to do a crisp cold Chardonnay with some peanut butter cups for breakfast. I don't know. I mean, what do you do for Mother's Day? Whatever you want in quarantine.
Right.
Open 17 bottles.
Right?
Right?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, but we don't have 17 people getting together, so maybe not. I don't know. Yeah.
We have 17 hours.
17 hours of Mother's Day.
Any last words?
I guess I'm done. Tormenting you
I know.
in the poor world.
He didn't have any advice or trivia.
I'll save my tips for next week.
All right. So, final notes. We have our face masks.
Oh yeah.
They are being shipped. They're coming back in,
Oh, we don't
and
have
then
them
they
that
are
way.
sold out already. So then we ordered again, and those sold out. So the pre-order thing is really working well. Thank you guys. Please go onto our website and vivocwinery.com and pre-order, because we are just ordering like crazy. So they are coming. And so you might have a couple days lag, but otherwise you're going to be able to get those sent out to you right away. We also now have really cute bomber jackets. Hopefully I have mine by next week and I will be wearing it. Cool. We also have aprons. So lots of fun stuff. So check out our website. And next week we will be drinking...
I don't know. You didn't figure that out yet?
I did not. I put all this other stuff together and I forgot again to pick out the wines for next week.
Let's do Syrah. Syrah?
Yes.
Okay, and
It would have been fun to do the Abbott Red and the Syrah, because Syrah and Syrah.
I know, darn it.
We could do the Abbott Syrah or the Abbott Red again, just so we have two Syrah comparisons. That would be a fun thing.
Okay,
So that's what we're doing.
we'll do that.
We're doing Abbott Red, which has a predominant amount of Syrah in it, and then our regular Syrah, and both are going to be available for you to pick up daily, 1 to 5 for curbside, or you can call and order them.
Yep.
And we will see you next week. Thank you guys.
Laters.